Let's welcome in NBA expert Colin Ward-Henninger here to talk about the Knicks this offseason and what maybe we can expect this season, although kind of hard to figure that out right now. Let's talk about Jaylen Brunson. Look, we know his dad's an assistant coach there. It appears they're all in on trying to land him. What's the latest?
Yeah, I mean, all signs indicate that Jaylen Brunson is going to sign with the Knicks. This has been the development really since the Knicks started making all those moves on draft night. We could kind of read the tea leaves here. And Brunson, he's a really good player. You know, he showed us last year with the Mavericks what he's capable of doing, not only playing alongside Luka Doncic as kind of the second ball handler, second scorer, but also taking over when Luka was hurt and showing that he can potentially be, you know, your number one option for stretches of a game or for stretches of a series. I don't think he's going to be your number one option moving forward for a team that has championship aspirations. But they clearly have zeroed in on Jaylen Brunson. They're willing to pay him, and we'll see how that contract works out long term. But this is a guy who you want to commit to. He's a hard worker. He shows up. He plays pretty much every game. And obviously with the ties to hiring his dad as a coach, they clearly had kind of a culture fit in mind with bringing Jaylen Brunson in. So this isn't a move that's going to suddenly make the Knicks a championship contender, but it looks like they're kind of in the asset collection business right now, trying to stay relevant while, you know, kind of building up their stockpile just in case a superstar comes available, you know, in the near future.
Yeah, and of course, they cleared up all that room, apparently, for him. Now, let's say that doesn't work out for some reason. We know a lot of people, including Avery Johnson, would like to see him stay with the Dallas Mavericks, and some people thinking that would be the best move for him, although money talks. If he does decide to stay with the Mavs, what's next for the Knicks?
Yeah, I mean, Jaylen Brunson going back to the Mavs was what people thought was going to happen, and this Knicks scenario just kind of came along. So it's certainly not, you know, out of the foreseeable possibilities that Brunson does go back to the Mavericks. So if that happens, what are the Knicks left with? There are not a lot of free agents out there, assuming guys like Zach LaVine and Bradley Beal and James Harden all go back to their teams. So a guy out there who might be able to kind of replicate what they're getting from Jaylen Brunson is Collin Sexton. He's a restricted free agent with the Cavaliers, which means that they can match. But given that they have Darius Garland and Karis LeVert and they're kind of built their core without him last season, I don't think the Cavs would be too eager to throw a huge contract at Collin Sexton if the Knicks are willing to spend some money on him. So, you know, a very similar player to Brunson. He can put the ball on the floor, kind of a scoring, undersized guard. Shot the ball well from three the last time he played. Obviously, he didn't play much last season because of his injury. But if you're going to lose a guy like Brunson and you're looking for a replacement, somebody who can do similar things, maybe not on the same level, Collin Sexton's a really good option. And let's not forget that this is a guy who averaged 20 plus points when he played full time a couple seasons ago. So you might be able to get him kind of on a bargain just because teams haven't seen him play and he's coming off the injury. And I think that would be a good fallback option if the Knicks get surprised and Jaylen Brunson does return to the Mavs.
Let's talk about Julius Randle here, because apparently the Knicks are now calling other teams looking for some potential suitors, maybe a trade going on there. I know you have a couple proposals of what you would maybe like to see happen in that particular trade. What are they?
Yeah, well, first let me say it's going to be very hard to trade Julius Randle. I think the Knicks have been exploring options for a long time now. He clearly declined last season after a tremendous season 2 years ago. But if they're in the market, if they're able to find a partner, one team I'm looking at is the Atlanta Hawks, and that's because they have their own kind of not disgruntled, but a power forward who they think probably won't be there very long. All the reporting is that John Collins probably isn't going to be on the Atlanta roster by the start of next season. And there's also reports that the Hawks aren't getting the kind of offers that they expect for a guy like that. So, hey, we have a power forward we don't really want. You have a power forward they don't really want, or he doesn't want to be there. Why don't we swap them? But if that's the case, Julius Randle at this point in his contract is a negative asset. So you're going to need to attach some draft capital. I'm looking at the Knicks just picked up a swath of first round picks. So let's give them the 2023 first and the 2025 first along with Randle. You get John Collins back. That gives you a young exciting power forward to pair with your young core and Jaylen Brunson and then, all the RJ Barrett and all the other guys the Knicks are going to bring along, Obi Toppin. And then for Atlanta, you get a guy in Randle who can at least keep you relevant, keep you in the playoff picture while you figure things out. And the key piece is obviously those 2 first-round picks. So, I don't think this is going to happen, but if the Knicks get desperate and if Atlanta is simply not getting the offers that they want, John Collins is another person who they could pick up. Another trade who you could look at, this is kind of in dreamland, but we've learned in the NBA, anything can happen. Rudy Gobert out in Utah. I think that they, the Jazz obviously are having some friction out there, kind of trying to decide which direction they want to go in. They just hired a young head coach in Will Hardy. If they decide they want to get rid of Rudy Gobert, the Knicks might be an attractive option because of those picks. So again, Randle is not equal to Rudy Gobert. You're going to need to throw in some salary as well. So I think Cam Reddish, an exciting young player. We still really haven't gotten a chance to see him play huge minutes, to show what he can do. So I think Utah might be intrigued by him. And then again, those 2 first-round picks as kind of an incentive. So, Rudy Gobert in New York would really shore up their defense. I'm sure Tom Thibodeau would absolutely love having him out there. And he's still young enough that he can build alongside that young core while you end up getting rid of Julius Randle, which will open up minutes for Obi Toppin at the power forward. So those are a couple trades that, in the scenario that the Knicks are able to find partners for Julius Randle, the Hawks and the Jazz might make sense.
A lot of decisions the Knicks have to make. Now, you did mention in that bringing along RJ Barrett. So here's the thing. Knicks have not re-signed a player they drafted in the first round to a second contract coming off their rookie deal. Since Charlie Ward back in the 90s, RJ Barrett could change all of that. Is that exactly what we're expecting here with him in the Knicks?
I was not expecting to hear a Charlie Ward reference this morning. Heisman Trophy winner Charlie Ward, by the way. But yeah, I think all signs indicate that RJ Barrett is going to be extended by the Knicks. I think he's shown enough in the last couple seasons to prove that he can be, if not the number 1 guy, at least a vital piece of a team that eventually ends up contending for a championship. The key is going to be how they build around him. But you look at his improvement as a ball handler, you look at his improvement as a 3-point shooter over the last couple seasons, which has really separated him. And you put him alongside, potentially a Jaylen Brunson guy to help take some of the pressure off of him. Barrett was really, once Derrick Rose was injured last year, Barrett was really one of their only playmakers. If you add in Jaylen Brunson, that takes some of the pressure off Barrett. I think that helps him develop more into the role that he's eventually going to have. But yeah, I think he's going to be in the company of the great Charlie Ward in being extended by the Knicks.
I believe he is still the only NBA player to ever win a Heisman Trophy there. Let's talk about Mitchell Robinson here because they're trying to figure out exactly what's going to happen. And the clock is ticking because they would not like to lose him. So it looks like all signs pointing toward maybe about a 4-year deal. What's the latest with him? What do you expect to happen?
Yeah, I expect them to sign Mitchell Robinson. Obviously, if one of those trades for Randle that I mentioned happens, then that's going to, kind of block up the center position. But I think they're happy to re-sign Mitchell Robinson. He's a guy who just hasn't really been available. He's been injured a lot since he's been on the Knicks. But you look at the defensive potential, and it's off the charts with his length, his shot blocking ability, his ability to block 3-pointers, which is a huge thing if you're playing drop coverage, to be able to cover and get your hand up and contest those 3-pointers. So I think if the price is right, Mitchell Robinson could be a guy that could help you kind of bridge the gap to the future. And I think he has a lot of untapped potential on the offensive end that he just really hasn't been able to show. Obviously, he can dunk. He leads the league in dunks almost every year, set a record for field goal percentage one season because all he does is dunk. But I think there is some more potential there. So I think investing in a guy like Mitchell Robinson, as long as the price doesn't get out of control, I think that's a smart move for the Knicks moving forward.
So you got some teams that are set, and then you got teams like the Knicks where there's a lot of moving pieces still. You got to nail some guys down. They're hoping apparently to get Jaylen Brunson. I was going to say Julius Randle, but excuse me there. So if you could look into the future, would you buy or sell the Knicks stock over the next 3 years?
I mean, it's a hard question because what are you buying or selling? Are you expecting this team to win a championship in the next 3 years? If that's the case, which, I believe most Knicks fans probably want, if not expect, I'm going to have to sell because Jaylen Brunson is a great player. but he's not a championship guy if he's the only guy on your team. So RJ Barrett, Jalen Brunson, Mitchell Robinson, Julius Randle, in a tough Eastern Conference that has the Milwaukee Bucks, the Boston Celtics, the Miami Heat, all these teams that are going to be contending for championships, that's just simply not enough. So unless the Knicks can take these pieces that they've accumulated, including all the draft picks, package them for a superstar down the line, whether it's a Donovan Mitchell or a Damian Lillard or somebody of that status to come in and take over as the lead guy, I think this is going to be a nice team. I'm not upset with any of these moves that the Knicks have made. I think they're doing smart things. But if you're expecting them to contend for a championship in the next 3 years, I'm definitely going to have to sell that.
And the guy in the picture we have used on our graphic agrees. Colin, thank you so much for joining us here on HQ to work through the Knicks just ahead of free agency, what we could potentially expect there. Thanks again. All right, so some teams with the most cap space entering free agency. The Knicks were already high up there. Now they have the second most room just behind the Pistons at $34 million after trading Alec Burks and Nerlens Noel, 2 future second-round picks to the Pistons. That got them about an additional $19 million, so now sitting at 34.